Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much for joining us this evening. First item on the agenda is item 7.1, adoption or modification of the agenda. There's no modifications to the agenda. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda, 8.0, approval of consent agenda. This includes regular session minutes for September 20th, bill payments for October 2023, approval of the personnel report, approval of the bus transportation routes for the 23-24 school year, and the MU partnership for education renewal. If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Jeff, can so I could vote on consent. Are we able to pull out September 20th minutes?
We certainly can.
Is that okay?
And should we take bus transportation out?
We
Since my dad
certainly
was
can.
Mentioned. Okay.
So we will pull 8.1 and 8.4.
Or is there a more efficient way to do that?
Oh, give me a minute and I will do that.
So for those following along at home, Mr. Saxon was not present for the 20th, and Mrs. Carlisle has a family member listed on the bus transportation routes.
Thanks, Jeff.
Absolutely. So with that, the motion would be to approve the consent agenda, which would be 8.2, 8.3, and 8.5.
I'll make a motion. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, please vote.
Was that you, Patrick? Okay.
Patrick.
Oops.
I'm reading 11.7.
I'm in the wrong one. Hold on.
Mine reads 11.7.
Yep, hold on a second.
And she's got it. Technology issues.
Yep.
Making sure we get it approved appropriately.
Okay, now we're ready. So it was
Scott.
Scott and Patrick.
All right, I think we're ready. All right, 7-0, motion carries. We'll pick up those other two items in new business later in the evening. Next item on the agenda is 9.1, comments from the audience. This is an opportunity for members of the audience to make comments to the board. A total of 30 minutes will be allocated for public comment. Speakers will be heard in the order in which they notified the superintendent of their desire to speak. Individuals addressing the board should state their name, address, and limit their comments to no more than 5 minutes. Items or issues related to specific personnel issues should not be discussed in open session. And the first one I have on this evening is Jay Pikevich. Thank you, Jay. If you would, please, and thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First, on August 26th, the Smithville Education Foundation held their inaugural Green Gala, which raised over $50,000 for student and faculty grants. On behalf of myself and my wife, Melissa, I wanted to say that Fountain City Winery was honored to be a part of the event, and we look forward to serving our school district and community with all their future endeavors. Tonight, I am here this evening on behalf of several parents and students of the district, and possibly many more that have experienced the disturbing trend in school policy since the beginning of the year. An unusual number of the student body, most notably our high school women, have been called out for dress code violations in accordance with the student handbook. This is of utmost concern because the disciplinary actions are almost exclusively targeting female students, while the male students are being given a hard pass. I apologize ahead of time for the slight parental advisory. According to the handbook, quote, all students' midriffs should be covered, and suggested labels that are sexually suggestive or promote profanity or profane activities are not allowed. Yet, a girl wearing a tasteful spaghetti strap top is forced to change in the halls, but the guy wearing the t-shirt saying, quote, I tap that, is ignored. An instance was recently reported of two students walking down the hall next to each other, one wearing a nice top that only exposed her belly button in limited circumstances, and the other with his t-shirt saying, I like trucks and big butts. The girl was sent off by the teacher to change, the boy was not. Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 states that, quote, no person shall, on the basis of sex, be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity. To have a dress code policy that, in wording or application, disproportionately affects one sex or gender over another is a clear violation of federal law. Despite being made clear in the handbook, male students at Smithville have been allowed to run a PE class shirtless, while females cannot in their sports bras. A situation mirrored at an Albany, New York school that is currently facing litigation threats by the ACLU. To be clear, this is not the fault of the male students or their parents. They have as much right to free expression as their female counterparts. The fault lies in school faculty and administrators that are working with a potentially antiquated dress code policy and applying it to overly affect female students. Upon speaking to the administration, only violations that appear as a written reprimand are reported. So, when a student is forced to leave class to change or cover up when a teacher disapproves of their dress, the administration doesn't seem to care. When a teacher thinks what the student wears is inappropriate and is sent to the student resource police officer, as happened last week at the high school, the administration doesn't seem to care. Any action by teachers that abruptly send one student out of the instructional environment is a reprimand that negatively affects both education and morale. A standard for acceptable clothing should be a part of the rules and principles for students and faculty. However, that standard must be applied equally to everyone. A teacher in one class should not be telling students what you're wearing is fine, and the following bell, that student being sent away to alter their attire in another classroom. Our students have enough to worry about in school without the inconsistent application of a dress code. 2 years ago, I came here to argue for the mask policy during the COVID pandemic. I argued with some of the people on this school board today. And one of the main arguments I heard was how distracting enforcement of masks was to the educational process, how the policy was detrimental to teacher efficacy. Now we have students being ripped from their classes to go change or being sent to police officers because a teacher or administrator is being overly judicious, and nearly all of them are young women. I implore the school board to direct their employees to be more rational in the application of the current dress code, to consider reasonable updates to the student handbook, and to offer a greater sense of equality for all of the students of the Smithville School District. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board, just a reminder, as we've not had public comment in a little while, we recently updated our public comment policy to extend the amount of time available. With that, and the board is allowed to ask follow-up questions, but as this item is not on our agenda, we cannot speak about it as a board this evening or address it. We can ask for administration follow-up or ask it to be added to a future agenda. Are there any additional questions or follow-up?
Yeah, thank you for speaking and bringing this to our attention. I feel like dress code is probably one of the top topics that has been brought up to me as a board member. So I hope we can use this opportunity to possibly add it to next month's agenda or work through that, because I do think it's a big concern for a lot of parents. The last time ours was revised was in 2010. And a lot has changed in the past 13 years. So the consistency and consequences, I'm on board with that. So if we can add it to the next month's agenda, I think that would be really helpful.
I think that'd be great.
Because the consistency and the clear standards across the board, so that things aren't open to interpretations. Yeah.
Excellent. Next, I have Aaron Holland. Thank you very much.
I'm actually here to bring up a discussion about the archery club, call ourselves the team. We are technically a sport in the state of Missouri, and just by show of hands, I hope I'm allowed to ask the board, did anybody receive and or do document? So I didn't type a speaking per se, but I did, however, share a 10-page document that I researched, wrote for you, so that you do have some background on archers. I'm speaking on behalf very specifically of our archers, which we have very much this year comparatively speaking to years prior. Team specifically, as it is a club. It's not NISHA sanctioned, it's not recognized as an activity or a sport. Specifically, our archers have the opportunity to letter. They do have lettering requirements. However, their letter results in patch or a small patch of pin. I would draw your attention to my archer in the front row who has not got his letter, but however is working to earn things like that. I bring this topic to you specifically because we have an ongoing concern with regard to archers seeking other sports, other activities, which that's great. We love, encourage, and support all archers to seek other opportunities. The concern, however, was brought across the past several years, and my son has been in the archery program since 7th grade. Archers look forward to coming into high school, having an opportunity to letter just as much as every other student looks forward to coming in with an opportunity to letter formally for football, baseball, whatever other sports there are. I think there's an opportunity, band, student council, things of that nature. And while there are opportunities to seek other activities, they don't always have the opportunity to do that camping sports that they've been chosen. For example, archery. It is actually a year-long event. And if you looked over any of the documentation, you'll see that we really follow the NASP, which is a national set of regulations for the archery programs. And we do that for many reasons. Because it does offer a lot of opportunity for our students to go farther in the state. It's awesome to qualify for state. It's awesome to go compete in those tournaments. This, however, is global. This is a nationwide archery system, but it's all global sport. In worldwide tournaments, you have national opportunities, which for the first time in 7 years, our archery team qualified for last year. So it was a new experience for us. We weren't able to make that happen last year, but we would love to see more opportunity come forward. We have tons of students that have lots of goals. It is a very mindful sport, or club, if you will. It does take a lot of mental focus. It takes a lot of discipline. We also hold our archers to high standards when it comes to their academics. We do have opportunity and we recognize academic achievement. We do better than academics. Our archers do get deterred by the opportunity to letter, but not receive the actual coveted big S for their jackets. And while that may not be a huge deal on college resumes, they may not look at that as, oh, you get a big letter. It doesn't make sense for our students. It does matter to them. And we as parents care about what they care about just as much. So all of us are here to be advocates for those students and get this on the agenda, hopefully, so that the district can vote on it. I have spoken with Mr. Moss. We've discussed MISHA. I'm aware that if we like to letter our sports that are recognized through MISHA, registered, sanctioned, whether it's an emerging sport and activity or a form of sport like football. However, I do want to point to the document that I provided everybody. MISHA does not guide lettering whatsoever. There are no guidelines. You can call them and look at their public information. We verified that multiple times because we have historically gotten a lot of pushback on archery is not under MISHA. The thing with that is, if we place archery under MISHA, just to break it down a little bit, that's our national recognition, that's our national regulation, that is how we get to nationals, which is East and West, and then there's a whole big nationals through there. If we put archery under MISHA, we register it. It is an emerging sport. Once they get to 50 registered schools, then they vote and they do all kinds of things. There are heavy regulations. It is Missouri specific. If you look to my documentation, you'll see that in the state of Missouri, separate from MISHA, the Secretary of State has acknowledged archery as our formal and recognized sport for the state of Missouri. It is in our statutes now as of last July. So with it being a state sport, with it being a global competition sport, with it being in the Olympics, with it having such an incredibly lengthy history as you see in the documentation that I provided through my research, it's something that our kids hold as a huge accolade in terms of what they do, what they achieve. We do have really high standards when it comes to lettering, to qualifying to different tournaments, and they work incredibly hard, just as hard as every other team that letters. If the school district were to pursue the idea of voting for our archers to letter formally with big coveted S, it would do a lot of things. It would boost morale, boost retention. It would aid in out of school just drawing in more archers, which, like I said, benefits in a million different ways, but specifically in the mindful and very academic purposes of being on the archery team, as well as the teamwork, as well as the retention of our students. I think it would lead to increased graduation rates. I think it would lead to better placement and opportunities beyond high school. There's tons of research out there proving that archery is a very safe sport. There's tons of research out there that's other. So if you look, I contacted our, I won't say competitor, but our neighboring district in Platte County. They have elected 4 years ago through their board to letter that activity, that club. They have not put it under MISHA. And the reason they haven't, you'll see this in your documentation, MISHA will sincerely and very negatively impact our archery team, every archery team throughout the entire state. The reason that it would do that is because it cuts our team out of state. We qualify to state, that's fabulous. We go, we get down to Branson, and our archers do a great job. The parents are involved, the coaches love it. We qualified nationals though last year. We go under MISHA just to get this letter, which the board, mind you, can vote for and offer to our students without placing us under MISHA. Registering it, MISHA will actually stop our season at state. We can no longer go to the tournaments that are out of state. We go to at least 2 out in Kansas. We travel 3 hours away with our kids to spend entire days outside in the woods shooting at 3D targets, all of which are qualified through NAS and they're recognized. They take their tournaments very seriously. It's an extracurricular activity throughout the entire summer. It's something that a lot of our kids shape their summer around, and it is a life skill beyond everything outside of this. So it is something that I would absolutely implore the board to consider recognizing, to vote on. And it's something so incredibly simple that we can do for our archers who have wanted this for years. And I don't believe that there's ever been a point where somebody has actually pushed the board formally like this for it. The very least though.
look at the end of my speech, I did add a quote, and I feel it's incredibly important and very relatable to the topic. My top responsibility. Let's change the status quo. We talked about antiquated policies just a moment ago. It's antiquated to not let our club just because we don't put them under bishop. It's not required, and we can do better than that for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I got a quick question. At the high school level in the club, just roughly, how many kids are in the club and participate? Just roughly.
And then another 24 amongst our 3 elementaries now.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's awesome. And my second question, thank you for putting all this together. I know it was a lot of information. It was very helpful. When you guys go to tournaments, the NASP organization that you referenced, they're the governing body, the organizing body that puts those together and overlooks all of that.
That is the National Archery in the School program.
Okay.
In each state is run typically by, like ours is Missouri Conservation Department.
Yep.
Kansas.
Yeah.
Kansas Parks and Wildlife.
I just think it's important to point out which is in your information, that it is a formal organized events that you guys are going to. It's not someone's backyard. It's a fun shoot. It is a competitive environment.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
My question, and this is to the administration, is could you let me know, like, if this decision was made, how many other clubs, how many other organizations would this affect if we set precedents with this? That would be my question.
Is there a reason to not consider other non-mission activities? I guess would be a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So in my research, I'm not seeing any papers, so I not only reached out.
You could use the mic for those
Oh, I'm
folks at
sorry.
home.
Hi.
We have a huge audience at home following along, so.
Huge.
You know this, I apologize. In the research that I have done and in very specific contact with Platte County, I've also reached out and was guided to Lee Summit, which is one of our competitors that we actually go and have tournaments with. They're really ahead of the curve in a lot of their clubs, and they have many, and he was huge on his clubs and a huge advocate for the clubs. They actually place in the hands of the coaches the opportunity to come to the board and to work with administration to decide on criteria for lettering. They have, for example, lacrosse, they have bass fishing, they have archery, they have a million different clubs. It's a huge district. And if the coaches and the administration agree on it, then they have the right to offer lettering opportunities. And so all of their clubs are very eagerly looked forward to and by the students with lettering, as well as supported by the administration. So it is completely in our hands, and it would do nothing but help all clubs, if that's helpful.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is this something that we would want to put on the agenda for next month?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pretty easy thing.
Yeah.
We greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While he's here, can I just give a shout out to Jeremy Batliner? He is a parent who, I mean, we would not have archery if it wasn't for Jeremy. And he spends so much time, like he's a volunteer. He volunteers more hours than you guys do probably. And it really, I mean, we wouldn't have it without him, and his passion for it and his guidance in the program has been instrumental for our kids.
I'm just
Thank
going
you
to
very
add
much.
that he got us $90,000 grant funding through the NRA, and he is the sole reason that we have all of the targets and all of the capability for all of our students 4th grade in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
He doesn't have an archer. He really does.
Well, you don't even.
Thank you guys so much for being.
Thank you so much. I appreciate hearing from you all.
Thanks for the students for coming too. It's good to see you guys.
You are more than welcome to stay for the remainder of our agenda. We will move on to 9.2 superintendent update.
For leave.
That's code for you can go if you want to.
You guys are welcome to leave, seriously.
No. No, no. Not rude. You're good.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your hard work.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yes, please take a cookie as well, or the whole tray.
Yes, we'll eat 'em.
Yeah, so I included in my update for this month, my September entry plan update, which this has been the opportunity based on last month's work to share the big buckets where our goals are identified under: finance, attraction, retain, and grow staff, excellent through quality staff and the safety and security, and public and community relations. So really taking that out as I met with different community members and also had building visits. One of the suggestions that was made during my transition is to potentially relook at how we engage staff. And the suggestion was made to actually go out during the school day and allow staff the option to come and meet either during when they have their planned time at the middle school, high school, or when their grade level has that time off, or if they're on core when they have that time off. So I've actually been able to do that at 3 different of our buildings. I went to the middle school, Eagle Heights, and then I was actually at Maple today. And it was a great way to, in a very small group, have a conversation. It gave me the opportunity to share our goals, but also get feedback on those things that become overarching. You know, one of the common things that comes out is looking at our compensation, our benefits, our calendar, those different things. And then also share a lot of things that they are just doing really successful. And what's nice is the principals have been able to be part of that as well. They take feverish notes and make sure and share out at the end of the day, just those common things. So everyone has that same information. But for me, it's been very valuable to come out informally. And I think it was great advice. And I'll give Gina and Sean, they were part of that conversation, and Martha, to rethink that rather than kind of coming out as a whole and sitting in front of the whole staff, coming out small group to be able to have a more intimate conversation, more kind of informal versus the, hey, here's a PowerPoint or here's Google Slides. And just really appreciated the time, and it's been great to hear the stories from our teachers and staff. And I do believe that that option piece has been important. So that way, those that are super busy or have other things, they can do that on their, we can do that catch up later, but it also gives them the opportunity to opt in. So that's been really valuable. The Superintendent's Advisory Council met last Friday on the half day. We found out that they don't like tacos, because we always try to feed them so that way they show up. Pizza went over much better than tacos. Yeah. So I guess I won't get tacos anymore because I really like Taco Bar. But it's so good to hear them talk and have discussions and really dig in. And one of the things that flipped, and I'll give Mr. Winterborn credit for this, was we have those kids grades 7 through 12. And last year we had them kind of sit and talk in what we called hot topics. What are things going on in your building? What's coming up? What are things that you need us to know at the district level and at the building level? And last time, Mindy and I took that information back to the building principals, and Todd made the suggestion, hey, have the kids do that. So this week, or last week, we gave them time to not only have the discussion about what are things that they're coming up, what are things they're concerned about. Like one of the things last month that they were concerned about was they were running out of a la carte items during last lunch. Well, they took that to Mr. Winterborn. He worked with OPA, and they were able to make sure that those a la carte items were not getting run out before that last lunch kids can come. But this time it was the kids initiated. They determined who would go back and kind of have that conversation. I don't know if they've gone back yet, but I know they're going to be, they've scheduled good.
Hey, that's a
They've scheduled it, but I think that is probably the thing we're pulling most out of them right now is, one, taking that leadership role to jump into this and apply, but also being proactive enough to go engage that adult, your building principal in that conversation. But they're full of energy. They've broken down their barriers of 7th graders being around 12th graders at this point, and building a lot of community. So that's been really good.
Are they meeting monthly?
We meet monthly. It's usually the Friday before the board meeting.
So could they provide some input on potentially what dress code looks like and what potentially lettering should look like for?
Yeah, we'll be bringing dress code to them this next month. And then we already talked a little bit about homecoming as well. We're going to have a deeper dive into the parade specific as we re-look at what those parameters were. We had the chance 2 weeks ago to meet with our building principals. They gave us some ideas. We started that conversation with our superintendent's advisory council and told them, hey, we're going to come back and have a deeper conversation in next month. So be ready for that. And then part of what that is to have them be able to inform those different pieces that we work on. So it's been a really good group. Our principals had a lot of ideas about parade and trying to make sure that we set up expectations and parameters to keep all of our students and our community members safe. We actually did an activity where we kind of did a plus delta. What are the things we love about it? What are opportunities for us to improve and change? And the parade's changed a little bit since '96 when I was in it. And I was a senior here, and just seeing the community pride and talking with community members that didn't have a kid in the parade or didn't have anything else. They were just there to be a part of it and see it. So that pride, that piece, we all want to hold on to, but we also want to make sure that we keep everyone safe during that time. So expect more of that to come, but again, using that student group to be a piece of that. And then the last piece is, do we know if we've been officially accepted yet, Michelle, for MSBA?
We have been officially accepted, yes.
So in working with Mr. Blumker, we were able to submit a student showcase opportunity during the Missouri State School Board's conference from November 2nd to November 4th. Our innovation and technology teachers at the elementary buildings were thinking, hey, we could have some really cool kind of stand to share the innovative things our kids were doing. So Dr. Cradfield worked with them. They worked on the application, shared that with Mr. Bunker, and he submitted it. So whenever we're told the date of having our stand, we're going to go out there and we're going to bring some kids and have a great experience. Today, while we were at Maple, we actually got to see in the Innovation Tech Lab the sixth graders work on a little sphere robot that they programmed, and then they built the track, and every track was different, but they had to program with their partner that sphere to go all the way through it. So I'm excited to see what they bring out and watch our kids really shine and brag about the great things going on in our buildings. That's all I've had. I'd be welcome to answer any questions, or if you guys have any other ideas to potentially bring to the Superintendent's Advisory Council, be happy to.
Sounds like everyone's thrilled with what they heard. Fantastic.
All right. Check.
All right, 9.3, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services.
Thank you. I would like to start by introducing Kristen Leifers and Michelle Cruz. They are members of board members of the Education Foundation, and they're here to just give a summary recap of the Green Gala. So take it away.
All right. I'm the last person that needs my I'd rather use that. So as Michelle said, I'm Michelle Cruz. This is Kristen Leifers. We are board members with the Smithville Education Foundation, and we also were part of the team that planned the Green Gala. So thank you all for your support with that. I hope you all had a very good time. I know it was an absolute blast for us. So thank you. Unfortunately, the rest of the rock stars on our team could not be here tonight. So you get the two of us, like I guess the roadies or whatever you want to call it. Not rock stars. But we want to make sure everybody knows just a little bit about the foundation before I give you our totals and share some really good news. So Smithville Education Foundation, we are the 501c3 tax nonprofit tax exempt organization that supports the Smithville School District. We support our students, our staff, our community. Our mission is to continue the tradition of excellence for all students in Smithville School District, strengthen ties between the district and the community, and enhance learning opportunities for everyone. Charitable contributions, like those raised in the gala, they support
grants for classroom teachers for innovative, high impact projects that normally we wouldn't be able to fund, right? Like normal budget doesn't fund those. So we find ways to fund the things that are really exciting, really innovative, and just new and different for our kids and for our teachers. We also provide scholarships to graduating seniors. And because of the generosity of the Smithville community, this first total at our inaugural event, which we're totally hoping to go over that amount next time. And hold on, we got to see if this works. Okay. Now it's right. 56. Whoop, don't start another one. Okay. $55,619. Don't only raise funds during the gala. Like, I've got QR codes for y'all. That's up on the big screen. But we're happy to accept donations any time of the year. For more exciting news, and again, thanks to the really great generosity of the entire village, this spring we are going to be able to award more scholarships to graduating seniors than we ever have before. We will also be able to award more teacher grants than before. And I feel like I need another drum roll, but I'll spare you. We have eliminated the limit for teacher grants. There was a dollar amount limit. Because we have more money in the budget this year, we're eliminating that limit, and you'll be able to apply for all of our staff can apply for things for classrooms, things to impact students. Just so that you know how we award things, teacher grants and student scholarships are competitive. The application is scored on a rubric, and multiple people on the board give individual scores. We compile those and we award funds based upon those scores. So it is competitive, but get it done. Staff, I hope we start encouraging the entire staff to start applying for those grants. I know Michelle Prattville, I'm sure you will be sending that out soon. I'm not sure on the exact date you send out the teacher grant application.
The first day of second semester.
First day of second semester, those will go out. And then student scholarships, those will be announced in the spring as well. So we encourage more and more people to apply because, guys, we've got a lot of money to give thanks to you. So thank you. Oh, wait, one more thing. Sorry. Gosh. Save the date. August 24th is the second annual Green Gala. And I hope to see all of you there. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Picture so that we can
Kristen says no. For social media, you know. Yeah.
Thank you, ladies.
In addition to the Green Gala funds, I just want to recognize Southern Bank. Although they do not have new people signing up for the Warrior Card, anyone who had a Warrior Card, we're still getting money from that. So they continue to contribute a significant amount through the Warrior Card. So thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night,
ladies.
guys.
Thank you.
That was awesome. In a recent Friday update, I shared some of the things that we're doing to support our new teachers. So I just wanted to highlight those as, again. We have completed half of our new teacher program for our year 2 people. If you're not aware, the state of Missouri requires a teacher induction program, a 2-year teacher induction program for every teacher new to the profession. So we just concluded the second of 4 meetings for our year 2 folks. We have concluded the second of 5 meetings for our year 1 folks. We also ask anyone with experience who is new to our district to participate in the year 1. So we have a pretty big group there, but they have been amazing. I would like to give kudos to my friends over here at this table. because they help with those presentations and the planning. In particular, Todd Winterbore, Rachel Marchetti, Ashley Dahl, Abby Meyer, and Monica Leary have been very helpful this year in presenting and working with our new staff. It is a fun time, right, Rachel? Yep. Yep. It's really rejuvenating for us to get to spend some time with them, and they are a talented group. In addition to that, Carrie Chambers, our literacy facilitator, Susan Argot-Singer, our math facilitator, and myself have divided up the new staff, and we're doing coaching cycles with them. So that includes a meeting where we sit down and talk about what their needs are, something that's coming up in the curriculum, something that they choose to receive some feedback on in order to grow as a professional. Then we do an observation, collect data for them, provide feedback to them, and then help them use that information to move forward. So we will do that with all of our new teachers first semester and at least another one second semester. However, we offer to any of them if they want us to come back more frequently, we're happy to do that. So also a really great time to get in and really see how our new teachers are doing. And again, an impressive group. So also in a recent Friday update, I shared with you a proposed schedule for the recognition dinner and student recognitions on January 29th. So I just wanted to revisit that and throw out an additional idea. So what I proposed was dinner from 5 to 6, and then the student recognition starting at 6:15 and running every 35 minutes. I think that would be plenty of time. Concluding with the middle school and the high school from 8 to 8:30. However, I was reminded that we've had frequent requests from the middle school and high school to move that recognition to the building during assembly when all of the students are available. And so I would like to propose that that we lengthen dinner a little bit, because an hour is going to be a little fast for that, and that we push the elementary recognitions back just a little bit, and that we figure out when we could go take our program to the students at the middle school and the high school, rather than have them come to the PAC that evening. Does that sound okay?
What time for the elementary?
So we probably would start the elementaries we could start them at 6:45. And then we would still be done by 8:30, which would be
Just
a good
trying to think
bedtime.
about bedtimes.
Yeah. Do you think you have little ones, so you tell me, do you think 8:30 would be okay?
Oh.
Is that pushing it?
8:30.
Yeah, it's pushing it.
Okay. We could leave it. We could leave it as it is.
So what time in the current schedule, what time would the elementary be done?
In the current schedule, they would be done at 7:55.
It's be done by, so then dinner would be from 5 to
5 to 6.
transition 6 to 6:15 to the
Yep.
PAC, and then roll through.
We've done it before in an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll run with that then. The last thing that I just left a flyer at your table. I don't know if you guys are aware, but for last year, Bria and Richmond Carson, who have the Carson Insurance Agency here in town, have they've facilitated this whole kindness award for students and for staff. And so they met yesterday with our building admin and most of our counselors, brought lunch. If you haven't had the tacos from Chops on Tuesdays, I highly recommend. Oh my gosh, they were so good. So they brought lunch, which we love. Feed us and we will come. And then share just details related to that program for this year. Since it was fresh on my mind, I just wanted to share that with you. There is a QR code on the back if you would like to nominate any students. Again, it's for a specific act of kindness. So they don't really want, oh, this kid is always wonderful. They want, these kids stayed after the football game and cleaned up the entire stadium, that kind of recognition. So they also are the ones who, if you follow them on social media, they recognize athletes and artists of the week at the high school. And so that program is continuing as well. And their intention is to include a scholarship this year for a senior based upon their kindness and how they exhibit that in the school community. That is all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Fantastic. We'll move on to 9.4, Executive Director, Sport Services.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blomker. Wanted to share this evening some progress that we have on some construction projects, and we're in a lull right now. We try to get most of our things during breaks like the summer break or Thanksgiving or winter breaks, but we are continuing to work on transportation. But that is also kind of at a lull because we are trying to get that soil compaction that we need to start on all our foundations. So I did want to share my screen real quick just to show a couple of photos of progress. And I believe that's coming up. I think Randy's going to switch the source over. Okay. So while he's bringing that up, some of the things that are on the photos show kind of the finalization of the sidewalks. You might also notice if you walk by the high school, you might notice that they have brand new sod right in front of the high school. So many of our projects cause us to break up a lot of the ground in front of the high school because all of the conduit, whether it's electrical, fiber, a lot of the low voltage items that come in the high school come in that way. And we destroyed that ground over so many different times over so many different projects. So now that we have those buttoned up, we wanted to put sod down and make it look good again. So if you get a chance, go by the high school, you'll see that it looks really nice out front there. And then of course, the last picture does show what it looks like at the transportation facility. And so that big mound of dirt will go away, I promise. A lot of people ask again what that was, and that is to get that soil compaction we need. Our engineers continue to test that site and give us progress on that. So we're looking somewhere between 60 and 90 days for that process to finalize. And then that will complete, and then they'll pull all that dirt off and get working on the footings and foundation. Because that building is what I would call like a Morton building or prefab building. When they have the footers and foundation done and they put that on, it'll literally be like a 1-day construction site project where you'll see no building, and all of a sudden you'll see a fully erected building. And so it'll be crazy when that happens. They want to get all that buttoned up and ready for winter, so then they can work it inside all winter and continue the progress there. So that is some pictures as far as construction projects go. The next document I have up is our budget on the construction project. And so last month I shared with you that a lot of the removal of rock from the site really escalated some cost on the project. Those costs did not go above our contingencies. They did use a lot of the contingencies, but not all of them. And now that that process is complete, we feel like there will not be a lot of contingencies needed on the transportation project. So I still have it in yellow because the excavation of all that rock out of that site did cause some escalated costs. I did want to let you know that in the last month, we have not had any escalated costs at that site. So we'll continue to do the soil compaction and be ready to go once that's ready. Of course, the main HVAC projects at middle school and high school are complete, as well as the sidewalk. And then the other projects, security enhancements continue on. You guys heard some of that from Ms. Harwood in our executive session. And then we continue to work on design documents for the middle school athletic field and then also the high school gym expansion. And so you'll be seeing some of those projects brought to you in the future with bids and how those came about. So be happy to answer any questions I can on construction.
On the transportation facility, the excavation of the property and the grading contain most of the unknowns cost relative, right?
That's
So
correct, Patrick. Yes.
everything going forward is pretty
Agreed. Yes, because the building is a prefab building and everything going forward after that, those were the big unknowns. You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
You say we're in schematic design for the gymnasium
Correct.
expansion? Okay.
Correct. Mhm.
For some reason, I thought the athletic field turf was 1.3 million, and on here it says it's 1.6 million.
1.3 might have been the actual construction cost, but then once you add fees on top of that, the total is 1.66.
What fees?
JE Dunn for construction manager. So you have all the bids. So the bids for all the contractors doing all the work, the installation, excavation stuff would be 1.3. And then it's not all at JE Dunn. There's also the other soft costs. So you have your architect, JE Dunn, other things like field goal post pads, scoreboards that they consider soft costs or owner purchased are also part of that cost. And that totals 1.66.
When are we going to talk about that contract again?
So the contract for JE Dunn was a 10-year contract. That process was done back in 2019.
But we just like renewed it or took a vote on it like a year ago or so.
So what they do is we have a 10-year master building contract with them, but then for each individual bond project that we do with them, they have specifics for that project with them. And so what you guys voted on was specific for that individual project, but then we have a 10-year.
We established them as an on-call, and then we're executing project designs with them, and that's what we're voting on independently.
So next time we don't need to vote for them, right?
So 10 years for
That's an option.
on-call seems long.
Well, 10 years was mentioned in the state audit.
Yeah.
So,
Well, my recommendation is that you would put out an RFP
right.
For your construction manager and go through that process again. You wouldn't want to have them, go through and be the design and work through the project and then not approve that contract. Then you would do it before that with an RFP.
Right. I just want to make sure that we have that option after they're done with this. That's how I could say it nicely.
Sure. In my opinion, I think Jay Dunn's done a fabulous job for us, building our construction project. Everything that we've done has been under budget, on time, and that was very rare during COVID. And so I feel like they've served our district well over that time. That doesn't mean we shouldn't always see what is best for the district and shouldn't always, put out an RFP to see if there is something that better serves the district. But I would judge their performance so
We
far
use
to
a
be good.
different design firm though. We use them as just strictly a GC.
They are strictly a construction manager.
Okay.
They're not the general contractor, they're a construction manager. Yeah.
DLR is the actual
Yeah,
contract.
DLR is the architect. And previously we used ACI Boland up until the same point. We did put out an RFP for both our architectural firms and our construction management. And at that point, it was decided that DLR was the winner of that, and ACI was the previous architect before. So we did change our architect at that time as well.
So Robert, we'll be able to talk about the middle school athletic field turf, what all that includes later on when you bring it to us.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
You'll see the bids, and then you'll see everything included in that project. Sure.
Thank you.
Just random question on the bids for the sidewalk improvements.
Mhm.
Is it a requirement that they bring bring the level of dirt up to grade with the sidewalk? A lot of times when contractors are putting in new sidewalks, they'll do a nice 2 to 3 inch drop off the side without bringing everything up to grade, which then brings, potential issues down the road of somebody stepping off and snapping an ankle or two. So I didn't know if that was a requirement in our bid, because a lot of time contractors like to slide on that.
Yeah, it is a requirement. If you see a spot that maybe doesn't have that, quite possibly could have been from erosion, from having a rain event that washed it away before they had some of the hydro seeding done. So that could have been a possibility. At one point, they had it up to grade and then it washed away a little bit.
So is it, when that happens, because it does happen, are we expecting them to come back and make it right again, or do we just let it go?
We would take it on a case by case basis to see exactly how much it eroded. If it was something minor, our grounds team would probably just improve it. If it was something that was major, we would ask them to come back. And
Some of the sidewalks can be they're not safe to walk on sometimes.
you have a specific area, maybe you have that we could look further into, or?
No, I'll get back to you.
Okay,
on that one.
sounds good.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Additional questions for Mr. Hedgeworth on this one? All right, 10.1, general financial review.
So, Mr. Blumker, that was just for construction. I
Okay.
do have one other thing I wanted to mention, then I'll be done. I did want to mention to the board that we'll be bringing or creating an RFP for transportation services. Our current contract with DS Bus does run out on June 30th, 2024. And when consulting with other contracting companies, they recommend that you do it at least 6 months before the contract starts, because it does take time to procure buses. So let's say, for example, we went with a company that was XYZ, that was new to their fleet of buses. They would have to go out and procure and say, hey, we need to purchase, 27 or 30 additional buses to service this new contract we just won. And so that was a recommendation from many contractors. So putting that together, we're going to put that out, and I anticipate December, I would bring a recommendation to the board for a winner of that transportation RFP. That way, the company that did win the bid would have time to procure the necessary equipment needed to service our contract.
In the RFP scope, will we illustrate that the bus will have the bus barn in place?
Correct, yes, yes. And part of that would be that there would be no rent due. So in other words, we have built that space. And then the person that won the RFP would occupy that building to service the buses out of.
Yeah, and that was part of my question. One question that continually asked me, transferring from Coulter's over to DS, they hold the lease on the buses, right? That contractor does, and then the facility we're providing is for them to house their leased buses.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yes, they own all the buses, hold the lease on them, and then they would house them at our facility. Yeah. Cool, thank you.
How long is that contract typically?
The current contract we have,
Whenever you bring it back up to bid for DS,
Sure.
for transportation.
typically what we do is we have a 3-year initial and then the option for 1-year additional terms for 5-year total.
Is that the same thing for food and the other big contracts
It
we
is.
hold? You're usually doing it a 3-year window.
Yeah, it's 3-year window and then 1-year optional renews after that.
Okay.
Unless there's something that is mandated by the state for some purpose. Now, food service is more mandated by the state, but that's typically what we do anyway.
Last question on transportation that was asked of me. I didn't know the answer, but we don't have a fuel contract with that we purchase our own fuel, provide that to them.
That is correct. So yeah, part of the transportation facility is to have our old holding tanks.
Yep.
Right now, our buses go up to Cinex on 169 and 92, which is actually going to close down here soon for remodeling. So we're going to have to find another spot for our buses to fuel. But going forward, once we have this new facility, buses will be able to fuel right there.
Yeah.
We also have an accountability system where people have to scan with a key fob.
Yeah.
That fob basically indicates who was at the pump.
Yeah.
And then that way we know exactly who is filling the gallons used, and we can track all that and have accountability. That's it.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next one. Floor is yours.
I believe next one's financial review.
Yes.
I have our second budget amendment later on in the document, so I will get a lot more into finances during that time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions in regards to the financial review.
Like there are no questions on the general financial review. So we'll move on to 10.2 board and superintendent goals.
Yeah, so one of the things that I highlighted in the agenda I shared with you guys, and I just sent the memo over to Karen as well, is how what has been part of a kind of a board priorities where that was a single item that was shared. I think you will see throughout this entire process how our goals are now reflected in our work. So Michelle was sharing earlier about working with our first and second year teachers, putting time and investment, particularly from our principals, into them, really focused on attracting, retaining, and growing our staff. Connecting with new staff at a greater rate. I know Kim has just recently done that. She shared I think you've shared in a Friday update recently about interviewing all those new staff members, but really trying to invest in them to, one, get feedback on how we can improve, but also rather than just sharing out our board goals at one event, really making it part of our meeting throughout. New business, Michelle will also share some academic data, particularly around MBAs and our real world learning, and then also some of our reading data from very beginning of the year. We just learned that Scott was elected to share about our board committee work and our finance committee, that we had our second meeting tonight and we'll continue to have on this night moving forward. So what I would like us to think about is, rather than this being an event, is us thinking of how do we continue that this just becomes part of our work and we highlight that this is part of a board goal. You know, and safety and security, Denise shared during our exec session. And then my work with those 3 buildings was feedback I got from staff and thought of how could we do engaging our staff differently, but that, you know, really comes down to communications and building those relationships with our staff. So wanted to highlight that this month, just that it's really becoming part of our work as we move through, rather than an event with an agenda, and it's really just becoming our agenda as we're moving forward. So I'd be happy to answer any of those questions.
I got a question on page 6
Mhm.
on the goals.
Mhm.
Says, by December 31st, 2023, identify comparable districts to rank ourselves with. With regards to compensation.
Yes.
What is meant by that? Because we pretty much have comparables right now. That just it seems odd to me. So
I think a piece of it is looking at, so when you look at our strategic plan, our CSEP, it talks about being in the top 8 of 25 school districts who we compare academically around the metro. But when we talked in our finance committee, we're narrowing that list down of who would be those comparable districts. So when I talk to that specifically, I think of which list are we going to use? Are we using that 25? Because that was the piece that we were using when we developed the CSEP, 8 of the 25 by 2028. But then in the conversation that we had in that finance committee, it's narrowing down and looking at some different factors within that. So I feel like, I don't know that we've truly landed on what that list is, but I think it will be a product of our work in the next couple months.
I just want to make sure we're consistent, because when we have the substitute conversation later, we already have comparisons. Administration put comparisons to the other Northland 6. So I just want to make sure that we're being consistent when we're talking about compensation in general.
Yeah, I want to clarify too. I mean, the board as a whole is going to have to figure out what that comparison list is, right? And I think one of the things that we had talked about in that, as we worked through this in our retreat, was, where are we losing teachers to, right? Where are we pulling teachers from? So, if it's outside that Northland 6, what's that look like, right?
So the administration, I mean, we've discussed about the variety of lists, what do we look at? And so for the finance committee, it may be one set, and then we have a subset out of that. When we're looking truly at that compensation piece, and maybe there's some parameters we pull out of that. But developing what is that, and then consistently comparing to that same group. So we're not looking at maybe our salary benefits committees looking at one set of data, we're looking at another, finance committee looking at another. We're going to rein that in through this process.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're consistent. So.
Any additional questions here? This is listed as info action. Did you need action? There are no additional questions. We'll move on to 10.3. We'll turn over Mr. Jacoby. Do you have an update?
Oh, that's me next. Yeah, so we've met twice on the finance subcommittee, and we're just, I think we're proceeding pretty quick. Last week and then this week, we're lining out the basics to the finance committee charter. We have a number of items that the finance committee will look at and work towards. We've been having conversations on the membership and what that looks like. Also, laying out the entire year of committee meetings and schedules. And then the topics that fall into that, right? Because we're trying to meet that January timeline of having meaningful KPIs to the board and the feedback around that. So that has been that's always going to be something that we continue to update going forward. Again, first year of having it. However, we've identified about 6 different data points today in our conversations that we can build from. We all feel pretty comfortable with moving forward. Now, again, that can kind of expand and it can just lend to other conversations as we move forward, especially around the topic of compensation for staff and so forth. So it'll all make sense when it comes to you eventually. But that has mostly been our work, along with, an application process also, for community members. And then we're also working on guidelines, basic guidelines of committees. Since this will be kind of the first committee that's formed, we want to make sure that there's consistency throughout. Probably that'll be used as a foundation for other committees that we are looking to put together. So we want to make sure that we keep that in mind going forward too. So,
Thank you guys for your extra work. Appreciate it.
sure, sure. Did I miss anything, Patrick or Stacia? All right.
Very good. Any additional questions or things folks want to report out? Hearing none, we'll move on to 10.4, approval of MSBA 2023 C board policy revisions. This is for the second of 3 readings. Any questions or comments? If not, I entertain a motion to approve this for the second of 3 readings.
Excuse me, so moved.
All second.
I'm good for
Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. And again, we go through these 3 times and have the opportunity to revise up to the 3rd and final approval. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda, 10.5, support staff recommendations.
Yep, in your board packet, you have a memo explaining the need for 3 support positions for the school district, 2 at the high school, 1 to support the board with some additional work we're doing with our subcommittees. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
And just to clarify, these are 3 existing positions that were recognizing additional work, correct?
That is correct. So the high school registrar and the high school bookkeeper, we're asking for 5 additional days added to their work calendar to help that building function more efficiently. And then for the other position, central office has a board treasurer that works on your behalf. We're asking for that stipend to be a larger stipend to accommodate the additional workload that we're asking her to do on behalf of the board and the work that we're putting into all of these subcommittees.
These would be not any added money to the budget. It would be absorbed by other things, correct?
Correct. Robert was able to look at the budget and make this cost neutral so that we can shift some things from one area into another to support these adds to these current positions.
Thank you.
Any questions on the recommendations? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the recommendations as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. There's no further discussion. Please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda, 11.6, options and considerations.
We're back to substitutes. So we've been doing a lot of work on making up some ground on our substitutes. We know that substitutes are critical for our buildings to function efficiently, to support all of our staff from if an instructional assistant needs to be out, a teacher needs to be out, we need somebody who could step in for that day or days while they're out of the building. So you ask for sort of a menu of options for what we could do for substitute compensation. On the last page of the memo, we did prioritize some options for the board to consider in combating our current fill rate, which if we look at it, it's around 83–84%. That's with our current staff members pushing into the classrooms during their plan periods And so if we take that out, we're at a fill rate of around 70%, 72%, which is significantly lower than we want it to be. Over the last week, I polled some of our neighboring school districts, and some of them are teetering around 90% for their fill rate. One of those factors is that they do have a higher substitute rate of pay. So it's one piece of that puzzle that we'd like to take another look at and see what the board would like to do.
Thanks for continuing to bring this back. One thing that stood out to me, I like the extra data you put in here. You mean, one thing they put in here is it showed like how much a day, but actually like how much an hour. So right now for $100 a day, our subs will be getting $14.29 an hour. They go to Park Hill Liberty, they're getting $19 an hour, $18 an hour. So to me, that really, that shows a little bit more that why maybe they would go there. And then I also like you showing us the fill rate for staff that we have filled, because I think something we're seeing is we've offered to pay staff more to go in there, but they don't want to. They would rather have their plan times. They would rather have that time to do it. So if we could have extra staff come in to do that. I think one thing that was eye-opening for me, and I'm probably naive, I don't have a lot of younger kids. I don't have younger kids, is I found out that in some of the schools if we can't get a sub, we are splitting the classroom and we're putting them half of the classroom in another teachers and half of them up. And we're starting out complaining about how our kids' class sizes are too big to begin with. And then if you're going to add another 15 to 20 kids onto that, to me, that really, opened my eye up. I know that Dr. Moss has proposed that if we have to do that we give those teachers, we split the sub pay so that each would get the $50 sub pay, because that's only fair. But I think if we've asked those teachers, and you guys have told us, and everybody that they would rather have their time period rather than the $50. They'd appreciate it if they have to, but they would rather have that time period. So for me, I think that's really made me even more want to increase our salaries for the subs up to the 130, just to make us, we'll still be the lowest of the 6, but we are much higher, close to the 6 to make it a difference. So that's just what I thought.
I agree. It jumped out to me, the absorbing of classes. But also what jumped out to me was the classrooms that multiple people are coming in one day to try to fill that. And as a parent of a student who has gone through 2 years of medical issues with a teacher where she was in a revolving door with subs until a solution could get found, I know the impact that can have not only on the individual students, but on those classrooms. And I've seen it firsthand. So I greatly appreciated all of the information, because being able to see that is having to happen. And I noticed it's happening, especially at Maple, which did also bring questions to my mind of how have we gotten it, like Horizon is this beautiful, this person, like they're subbing over and over and over. Eagles kind of close to that, but not quite. And then for Maple is like barely keeping their head above water. So like, how do we help support that and get that through the door? And for me, I was thinking the same thing. This feels like a big red flag to say, yeah, we've tried. We've been trying to look for solutions. We're not finding it yet. So we're going to have to take that next step, because this is directly impacting those students in those classrooms. And it's not fair to those teachers, and it's not fair to our students.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point. I hear from my wife on this matter intensely, and I'm totally in favor of moving a step forward. I just ask that as we do this, we keep in consideration how much is inflicted from our own internal operating structure based on, hey, we have this type of development or PD at this time. And I don't know, and Dr. Cradfield, you probably have a better idea, but how far out can we forecast our sub needs if we are going to have, because we put our PD a year out. So maybe there's a way we could.
We actually just did that today. We go into the system and look to see how many subs are requested on a particular day that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean it won't change the day before or the day of.
Sure.
And so when that happens, the priority becomes the emergency and not the professional development that's planned. And if we need to leave a teacher in the building, we leave them.
Yeah.
So please know if a teacher does not get a sub and our buildings cannot cover internally, that they cancel that sub and that teacher stays.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. I think as we move forward, though, long range, I think it becomes indicative that we look at the modalities of how we do PD across the board. And then we incentivize structures that, help us internally help reduce our own demand needs for subs. And I don't have an answer for that. I've kind of mentioned and probed on it, and we had a conversation, Dr. Moss and Dr. Cradfield. I know you and I have been along this for quite a while now, but I think that's, increasing the rate of pay is just a piece of it.
Yeah.
Right. Because if we're just going to chase inflation, I think we also have to be creative in other ways. And I leave that to the administration long range to see what that looks like. But just a point of conversation.
I would agree with Mr. Saxton's comments. I mean, we know that, the second biggest reason for subs is school activities. So we need to take a hard look at our own internal operations. Maybe there's PD in one school and they do have coverage, but maybe at forced a sub shortage in another school, right? So we need to take a long, hard look at it. I think I've been very clear about this. Even if we adjust it up, I don't believe that we're actually solving the problem still. Now, I'll be happy if we do actually solve the problem. And yeah,
we all
but we do need to. This issue is not going to go away anytime soon. The pool of applicants is much smaller now. And I think that other schools that even increase their pay still have issues. So we just have to be honest with the entire staff and everybody when we're discussing this subject.
Yeah, and thank you to Kim and team who put this kind of statistical report together, because clearly we're behind the market value where we should be, and we need to work in a better direction that way, hands down. So I think that's, everybody's going to probably lean that direction. But
yeah, I think every meeting we've asked you to do something different with this. So thanks for continuing to do that.
Like for next week.
Can you put it back up?
But
Got it up briefly. We put it back up.
for me, I don't think we're going to be able to pick out any one of these things and see a gigantic impact. And I'd like to continue to keep a pulse on this, whether we review it monthly or as you guys feel is necessary. But, when I look at our options here, I tend to share the same concern that Scott does is, there's a significant gap between us and number 5, but does closing that gap somewhat get us to where we want to be? And I don't know, we obviously have no control over that. So we could do 120 a day and see no improvement, but have spent a significant amount of money. And that's where I would like, that's why I've asked for a lot of these questions, some of these things. I would like to see us go after a solution that we would have more control over. And that's why when I look at a situation of possibly hiring a full-time teacher who can't go take an opportunity for $5 more down at Platte County or anywhere else, that person would be here every day. There's no competition at that point other than them potentially leaving, but we would have an investment made in a resource that would always be here. We wouldn't have to worry about investing money in that solution and not see an impact. It might not be a significant impact. One person might not make a huge impact, but we would have total control. We're investing this money and we will have a positive outcome because that person will be here all the time. That's just the example that I see in here, but that's what I would be more interested in, is investing the money in a solution that we have total control of the outcome.
Yeah. We're good. And I will, I am interested in increasing the teaching during plan time. I don't want to speak for the teachers that, you know, treasure plan time over the opportunity to get paid a little more. I would prefer that we are paying our staff a little more if they are wanting to take that on. And that is a small, adjustment, as you can see on there. And I'm all ears on recommendations on the other item. I know obviously the regular substitute is going to be the main one.
Do we compensate, Kim, when we split?
We do not.
Like,
currently.
We should.
but that is one of
Zero
the
sum.
options, number one on the list. Because if we're splitting that class between two other teachers, we would have paid a substitute to be in that classroom. We just had a vacancy that was not able to be filled. So if we can split that substitute pay between the two teachers that took on those students, it would basically be cost neutral because we would have paid a substitute.
Absolutely. And you know, the added stress to receive, you know, 9 more kids and then try to get through your curriculum plus all the tasks you got to complete within that day.
Well,
I feel like that's something
we would be looking at a cascading effect here too, correct? If we move on that and say, yes, if a teacher has to combine classes, we're going to take care of that teacher, but that's going to be like the last resort.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So that only happens if we are just in that dire situation where that's the only option we have. So we can pick multiples of this for like the teacher, if they're doing it during their planning time. Again, that's hopefully something that they're not going to have to do. But if they are in the position where they want to, and it does come available, then that is available to them at $30 an hour instead of 25. So
100%. So we ranked the splitting number one because it's cost neutral. We would have to pay that sub. It's good for the staff members who are doing that, and it's good for the students to have a regular teacher that's absorbing them into their classroom. So we put that as sort of a no-brainer there. Hopefully that would be something that was pretty common sense, right? And then the substitute incentive we ranked next because we have substitutes who want to be in the district and we want to entice them to commit to Smithville and substitute on a regular basis. And so if they're committing to us, let's reward them with that incentive. And then they're not going over to a neighboring district. They've got to know the students, they work well with the administration, and the administrators like them in the building and they're good for our students. So again, we put that as our second priority, trying to get that regular face in a building that the students know and that the other teachers know and trust for them to come in and take over their classroom. So that's why we put that as number 2. And then the third one is getting that regular sub rate up to where we're not a huge gap behind some of our neighboring districts. I can tell you, I spoke to Platte County. They're going to their board again this month, and they're going to be doing some things with substitutes as well. And so we're at a $20 gap now. It could be more. It could be more. So how do we close that gap is something that we need to take a look at.
And Kim, just to clarify, these are priorities and considerations of funding strategies, not operational implementation strategies.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That's, to your point.
To
Like,
Stacia's point.
Well, and the Platte County is a prime example of what we're talking about. You know, they increased their sub and it didn't work out as much, right? And so now they have to come back with a different solution. Now I'd be interested if they have some kind of creative solution that we have not thought of yet, besides just pay.
Well, they currently do not pay for splitting a class either, and they're moving in that direction because everyone's hearing that that's a necessity now. So I know that that's one of the items that they're taking forward. Another is internal paying teachers more for teaching during plans as something that they're looking at. They were around $18 to $20. They're bumping that to, they're gonna request a $30, which is what we're asking as well. So they're just trying to, keep pace with what's happening if you don't have regular subs. But their fill rate is higher than ours.
What, we taking an item at a time? How are we gonna do this?
I mean, when I look at the list, I mean, options 1 and 4, 1 being the splitting of the sub rate to the teachers when that class is split. That's basically a boost to teacher morale, essentially,
Right.
to compensate for the added workload and stress. 4 being the same thing. It's just an additional investment but neither one of those two actually attracting more subs to the district, which might not be available. I don't know, but I think those two things are really important because we have, obviously the data shows we're actively doing that. And if we continue to do that, there could be some negative consequences to that from a teacher morale standpoint.
So I kind of look at it as, why not load the toolbox? Consecutively, you're not going to deploy all strategies at one time. So there's associated cost value that you're going to operationally go through. So why not load the toolbox with your operational strategies? That's how I look at it. There's a cost impact either which way we go. Why not put all the elements in place?
At least 1 through 4 for me. I'm not quite at 5, and I think Kim, and I can't remember where it was, but I remember seeing somewhere where you compared that number 5 to what it would be if we increased the sub rate. That number 5 is more expensive.
Definitely hiring a full-time substitute with benefits is going to be significantly more than if we did some of these other strategies, because that's one person that we're bringing in and we may have multiple vacancies. And so that one person can only be in one building at a time. And so again, long-term might be a goal to get there and certainly an option. But would it be the most effective at this time? I don't think that it would.
See, and I kind of look at, there's going to be a break-even opportunity. I think when you employ the first couple strategies, I think it's going to give us a great year of financial data to say, okay, was our break-even? Should we have hired 3 full-time teachers in the building?
Yeah, I like that.
And so back to what I was, by the way, Ms. Whitaker, I appreciate you bringing up class size issue again. I can't wait to have that conversation. So, however, do we want to go ahead and go one by one? Because I will, is that what our plan is? Or because we might modify a couple of these as we go?
It's up to the board to decide how you want to handle it. So if you were to modify, what are your suggested modifications so we can discuss them? Because I think, frankly, if you're going to modify, it might change the way I feel about one of the previous ones.
Number 4, I would like to modify to $35 an hour.
And number 1, we're paying retired teachers $140 a day. So it would seem consistent and fair that they split $140 instead of $100.
141.
41. That's right. Yeah.
It's a good catch. Wait.
Is that on number 1?
Yes.
And Ms. Whitaker, you mentioned 130 a
I
day.
messed up. That was
Okay.
my fault. It's 120.
Okay. I
Thanks
was
for catching
I was
this.
wondering if you're going to ask for that.
No,
modification
thank
or
you
not.
for catching it.
Well, Robert, I don't know if you have this, but what would, you have 40 to go regular substitute rate from 100 to 120 a day. You have that at $40,000 roughly for the remainder of the year. What's the added cost of that $40,000 to go to like a 125?
But I'd probably just scale it. So,
So it's
125 is
$2,000.
25% more. So I would just take 25% more of 440,000,
So you're looking at
about 50.
$50,000 to go to 125.
Yep.
Instead of $40,000.
Correct.
And 125 gets us to at least match current.
And we take those estimates. What we do is we take the last couple of years of the amount of subs we've had, how many times they've said, we kind of take the COVID years out.
Yeah.
And so it would depend on how many subs we need the rest of the year and some of those things that, you know, we.
And I mean, adding to the, you guys mentioned this in here, but adding to that substitute rate of pay does increase the pay to the teachers, correct?
It does. So if they retire and they pay out ALD, and I'll let Kim speak more to that, but that percentage does,
Yep,
you know, have a higher amount. So
That's correct. It's tied. Our annual leave day payout is tied to the regular substitute rate of pay.
Yep.
So it does have an impact on our.
there'd be an increased incentive to cash that day in, right?
Put it in or
Save
keep
it.
them.
yeah,
For like,
not be
Cash them out
gone for the
later.
day.
So
So
I,
Our permanent subs, they don't have benefits currently, correct?
No, they are not necessarily full-time. Our permanent subs, work in a building a number of days per week, typically 2 or 3. Right now, we do have a few subs who are working every day in a building. But we cap the number of hours that they work. So as we look at towards the end of the school year, we may have to cap that off. Because of rules around ACA and offering benefits and all of that. That's why we want a couple of different permanent subs in a building so that one may work 2 days a week, the other may work 3 days a week.
Is there a point where that balances out where it's worth it to pay benefits versus
That is
trying to do this thing
what?
versus trying to like, you know, what we're doing here?
So we
there a point?
pay approximately $8,000 in benefits to our active staff. So you would add an $8,000 spend to that sub rate of pay.
Yeah, I just wonder where that number is, where it might make sense.
I think a lot of our permanent subs like the part-time, the consistent, but part-time. So I don't know if many of them would want to go full-time.
Right. I mean, we've asked, that is absolutely correct. A lot of institutes like the flexibility of it, but the perm subs like knowing that they're gonna be in the
Yeah.
same building, specific days, that sort of thing.
I was just gonna share with you all, I've had several people contact me, our retired teachers in particular, thanking us for that. So I just thought I should share that with the board, as well as a few others that I've heard feedback saying we might consider, we would like to be in our home community, but we can't, you know, that higher rate of pay is certainly enticing elsewhere. So I don't have that data written anywhere. I just thought I would share with you all just some informal feedback that's come my way.
I just really don't like the idea of increasing our sub rate still being last. I mean, it's very similar to the retired teacher pay. We were very intentional about being first, even though it was only $1 and seemed kind of petty. I mean, being at the top of that list is important. And I mean, that based on the numbers in this chart, if we did, to your point on 4, go from 30 to 35, that's $3,350 for the rest of the year. If we went from 100 to 125, which at least ties us with Kearney and moves ahead of Platte currently, they can make adjustments. That's $50,000 a year. And if we did the substitute incentive increase as well, that's roughly $5,000 for the rest of the year. So we're looking at an additional $60,000 in spend that wasn't budgeted. Is that something that you're comfortable that we could absorb
It is.
into the budget?
It is.
Plus a little more if we go 140 instead of 100 on that split.
Yeah,
But,
I mean,
$21
Friends
a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't want to just keep adding to the substitute pay, and I don't like voting on it still being last. It just doesn't feel right.
Well, we know that, from last month that, our reserve balance is pretty significant. And I think that, obviously, most of us our long-term goal is to improve our entire staff pay. And we should be able to.
Safe to say all of us, right?
Yeah, yes, I would say that. Being aggressive with that again this year, I think we should be able to do that with our reserve as high as it is. So
if we did, to your point, if we did $100 to $140 a day and substantially made the jump to number 1 in substitute pay, that
well,
would
then
be,
we're at retired teacher pay.
that would be about $90,000 added to of unbudgeted costs. So it'd basically double it from 40 to 80. So like it was just rough numbers.
I was for a lot of this. I just didn't know if it would pass. So you guys bringing it up is good. I appreciate it.
Yeah, any feedback? I'm looking at some of our admin, like, I know you guys have this over here, so if you want to share, you certainly can. I will.
I'll speak to
Yeah.
something that Ian brought up earlier. As somebody who works on the subs in the middle school daily, we do plan out and for we have eight subs for the month. That's not the problem. The problem is on November 8th, we get 2 more people out for November 9th. We won't find 2 subs. I mean, I'm just being honest, we will not find. And so, we can plan out and we can look at our internal operations and we can do that. So the issues rise when the day of or 2 days out, someone's sick, someone needs to be gone. We don't find subs. Find them when we plan out farther.
Yeah, it's a volume issue.
Correct. And so, I don't know what internal operations that we could do. We've offered things to our staff, like, hey, would you work for $25 an hour outside of the on this PD opportunity? Sometimes the feedback we get is no, we don't have, we can't get enough of them with the same commitment to make that commit. Now that pay increase raised above what they make for career ladder, the same as career ladder, maybe more people would be willing to do that. I don't know, but it would be an internal operating option that you could offer staff instead of missing school.
Yeah, I appreciate the insight. I don't have a grand notion of what it should be or look like. I just ask that eyes wide open, and then we consider all avenues as we prepare futuristic long term. Because the reality is, we're going to outpace. We'll move ahead next year, and we're going to compete against revenues we don't have until we adjust levies and stuff like that. And that's the 10-year dynamic we need to prepare for. But you're absolutely right. There might not be a thing we can do operate. I have no idea. But I think as you guys consider those avenues, if there's opportunities, you guys will cash in. And if not, there's just not. I don't have a notion either way.
So trying to summarize this a little bit, and if I'm off, please let me know. But as we said, we do have some substantial curves based on the work that's been done. We see the impact we're having on our teachers and our kids when we can't have a fill. So I'm trying to summarize here, and I'll put it into a motion.
Yeah, I'm ready to make the motion if you want to.
Do you want to make the motion? You make the motion, and I'll.
I would make the motion that we approve options 1 and 2 as noted in the packet. That we would adjust option 3 from 120 to 135, which would jump us to first, and that we adjust option 4 from a proposed $30 an hour to $35 an hour, and we table option 5, which would be an added cost to the district of roughly $80,000 for the remainder of the school year.
I will second it so we can discuss it, because I think we want to, I would like to clarify one. I'd like to see that move to 141 instead of 100.
Oh, yeah, no, whatever. Yeah.
So do you want to modify your motion to 141?
Modifying option 3 to $141 a day, still making us first. And it would be an adder of rough.
No. Option 1.
Oh, option 1, sorry. Yeah. Option 1 to $141. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I missed that one.
2 as in packet.
Sorry,
Do
there's
as it
option 1,
stands.
so.
Yeah.
3
So
to 135 and 4 to 35.
Yeah, 135 and 35.
And then 5, we continue to monitor that the revised motion.
Yep, I missed that one. Thanks.
I will second the revised motion.
Yep.
Open it up for further discussion.
I'm just looking. Yeah. Wanting some boots on the ground kind of feedback.
And as they do that, one thing with 5, I like the idea of, that December graduate to be able to potentially hire that person.
Yeah.
Is there anything preventing us currently from hiring a December graduate?
Their eligibility to, no, but they're like, we're still looking for a special education teacher too. So they're getting snatched up pretty quick.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, no, I mean, always looking at the budget. We've generally hired for vacancies, but it's an option.
To clarify, would these go into effect tomorrow? Any options that were voted on today? Or would there
About
be a certain,
8:45 this evening.
would there be a certain date that, okay,
Do I gotta put that in the motion? I mean, that's a policy.
just
No, I
wanted to make sure for
Come on.
payroll purposes, you know, because this will change a lot of the payroll.
I would ask for payroll purposes that it be at the beginning of the next pay cycle
Okay.
for our substitutes, so that we don't create
Sense.
additional work.
So
Can we,
what day is that?
I would have to pull that.
Do we need to modify the,
I think we can let them execute that, but I think, you know,
Have
for
an effective date.
clarification purposes.
Yeah, what was your 135 is what we're proposing?
Calculate how that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Something else I would like to point out publicly is we're at 58% fill rate at the middle school as you saw the data. We could not operate effectively. And so I want to say thank you so much for our teachers' willingness to jump in and cover classes on the time. It is so, I have so much gratitude for that, and I want to make sure everyone understands that it's daily that I'm asking teachers, hey, everybody go to cover third hour for this teacher. And we have a great staff who's jumping to help. For the 58% fill rate, you could imagine we would be sunk without that cooperation. So I just want to say that.
Additional discussion?
Okay, just a couple points. One, I just want to make sure that the 35 an hour in relation to the potential for teacher splitting for 141, that makes sense. To, you know, that math kind of works out.
But they're only covering
For
1
1 hour, you know, I'm just trying to break it down that way. Is that a big enough difference then for our retired teacher? Because before that was a great increase to incentivize a retired teacher. Is 141 now bringing in those retired teachers? I guess compared to other districts, we'd say yes, because we are number one there, but
I don't know. My feeling is this is something we're probably gonna be having to monitor every single month and look at recommendations and doing, right?
Specifically, your question, does a retired teacher appreciate a $6 difference?
yes.
Because we are at the top and because I know Kim has onboarded a couple of retired teachers to be subs in us, I think it is making a difference. I think the 135, yeah, it's close, but still as a retired teacher, you're getting more. And you're still picking your schedule. And I can tell you that the current subs will, one of the things we were worried about is if we went to 120, would we really pull back the subs that have already somewhat left us and somewhat established themselves in a different district at 130 or 135? I think I would confidently say we will bring some back.
But we can't just retired teachers tonight because it's not on our buffet. Correct.
No. We can bring another sub menu to you next month. Or
Wanted to point that out.
Well, I think that's something to keep in mind. Like, I
Yeah.
want to make sure that
we're valuing.
there was a reason why we upped that retired teacher pay. So,
Correct.
And I would want to make sure that we can, whether it's done publicly and it is a bullet item, if nothing else in consent agenda, that we are giving you this data.
Yep.
So Kim's done the formatting. It's the hard part's done
Yeah.
on an ongoing basis. So you guys can see that and see whether or not this is making a difference. Then we can take a step back and look operationally. Do we have different things that we could potentially move or not to reduce the number of subs we may need? But we gotta engage our teachers in that conversation. Those most impacted by.
And then one of the things that we discussed in our conversation is, you know, what are those other things that we can do to help incentivize, you know, an activity pass for our subs who substitute.
Yeah.
frequently,
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
just all those
Totally.
little things that we can do, right?
Yeah.
which adds up for a family.
Yeah, good point.
hiring versus other buildings. They do have more permanent staff than any other building in the district. That's commonly evidence that the permanent sites work. And so I think this conversation, as it continues, should be focused on how we can get permanent cuts in every building, whether that is hiring additional, teacher, whether that is just, I think they argued this time in there for 5 days.
They would. So that permanent sub that works 5 days would now be, and that 5th day starting to get, it would be retroactively $155 a day. So I think that comes in our branding of that too, when we talk to those subs as well.
No, we understand that. No. Yeah.
Love about it is the flexibility that they can say, you know what, I'm going to work every Tuesday and Thursday at Eagle, and that's going to be my schedule. So they do love that. So maybe just letting more people know, hey, that's an option. You could work 1 day a week and be considered a permanent sub at certain buildings. You could even do 1 day at Eagle, 1 day at the middle school, 1 day at, you know what I mean? You could be in a different building all the time. So perhaps getting the word out about those positions would be really helpful.
Thank you.
So to that end, I'll attempt to summarize this and make sure we got this right as we go to vote. Number one, where we currently don't pay teachers to, when they split a classroom, they'll split 141. Two, as presented in the packet. 3, we would move our substitute pay from $100 a day to $135 a day. And 4, where teaching during plant time is currently $25 an hour, would be moved to $35 an hour. Everyone understands if there's no additional questions?
The only other question is, did we need to make the effective date as part of the motion?
No,
I think that's the administrative.
Okay.
Good catch.
There are no further discussion, please vote.
Thanks, team. It's been a while.
Thanks again. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you for your feedback. Yes,
Just
thank
that's
you
cool.
guys.
I think you've got some social media stuff to get working on, right? Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim.
Oh, good night, kids. I'm home.
If I'm correct, next item on the agenda, 11.1, FY 24 second budget revision.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Blumker. So I have some great news as far as the second budget revision goes. And the last time we approved the budget, it was the preliminary budget. And that preliminary budget is effectively named because that budget is presented before we know our final assessed valuation. It's before we know our final hiring of teachers, meaning all the teachers that we hire, are they on range A, step 1, or the majority are on range J, step 10 or 15. So that hiring pool makes a big difference on as teachers come on the salary scale. Also, we take in out college hours from teachers and get those from them, and then of course move them on the range according to their education. And we also, once we get that assessed valuation, even though we are limited by the Hancock Amendment, which we have to lower our levy, which we did in previous months. We also look at our new construction, and new construction is not tailored by the Hancock Amendment. So we receive the full amount of that. So with all of that information in, our current deficit in funds 1 and 2 were just over 500,000 in the preliminary budget. After everything has been calculated, I'm just going to go to the end here on the summary page. Our current deficit is $98,031. So we've made a big jump. A lot of that is that new construction and AV that was surprised. Personal property was a little bit stronger than anticipated. And of course, all the other things that go into the data that we have in October versus June, where a lot of that is preliminary. So again, as you go through our budget, some of the things that have been added that were there in our preliminary budgets, we have our new strategic plan that has all of our pillars. It also has all of our objectives. And then as you scroll down, we have also added some information regarding demographics about the district. And then as well, you can see our budget cycle and how we plan for those, what that looks like. We also have cohort enrollment here on the budget revision that we also will have in a later a later agenda item as well. And then some of the key components I wanted to mention, as far as tax levy goes, you're probably saying, well, Robert, didn't we just change our tax levy to 7.7504? Well, we did. This data is used because we're comparing to other districts, and DESI's website does not have the new tax levies that everybody just set theirs recently. So that is last year's data, just FYI. And so looking at some of the revenue, we look at our biggest revenue gain was in local. We had a huge year in assessed valuation. You can see we went from 347 million to 347 million to 403 million. So that's a huge jump. But our county, state, and federal revenues are all pretty flat, basically because our enrollment has stayed flat as well, if not slightly declined over the last couple of years. So as you can see the graph, this just gives a local representation of how we do receive our funding. You can see the majority of our funding is, of course, local, and then state, and a little bit of county and federal. Some of the expenditures, of course, this was one of the biggest years we had for salary across the board. They went up about 7.5% for certified and classified. And then we increased career ladder to include level 3 funding, and also increased the number of steps on our salary schedule for support staff. We also increased the amount of board paid health insurance from $620 to $650, and then also increased our dental options to go to a PPO option over the HMO. And so the HMO option was very limited, didn't have any local providers. That PPO option has much more local providers. So that was a great benefit to our staff, and I'm sure our staff definitely thanks the Board of Education for approving those. This gives a quick breakdown of our expenditures that we have estimated and how that's spent. Of course, you're going to see a big chunk of that in Fund 4 or Fund 40 until we have the construction project done. And then once that construction project is done, you're going to see that piece of the pie really shrink. So that ebbs and flows when we have different bond projects and those gets approved. And so be happy to answer any questions that you might have over our second budget revision. Before I open that up, I do want to say that the actual on the 2022-2023 data that you see for our fund data, our revenue by sources or expenses by fund, that is straight off the ASBR. So that is not estimated anymore. That is actual ASBR data. But of course, this current year, which is the 2023-2024, is still budget or estimated data until that fiscal year ends in June of 2024. And then Karen goes through and finishes the ASBR process. So be happy to answer any questions I can.
I have a question. In the board, like the budget revisions, I thought that we had agreed that the salary and benefits, that workshop in May, didn't we move that up so that the feedback was that it was really helpful? So retaining and recruiting staff, they had that information available earlier.
So let me move to that graph real
Page
quick.
8 or 9.
Yeah, so in the past, we had always done it in May, and last year, we did move that up ahead of time.
Mhm.
So that way we could get information to the board, to the public, and do something early. And so we can certainly do that again, and I can change this graph. I believe, we had discussions with our finance committee to do that again. So I can change this graph to reflect that we feel like February might be more of a pertinent month to do that instead of May. This does just reflect historically from not last year, but every year before.
Yeah.
So yeah, good point.
And then come back and do it again in May, just in case there is some kind of significant changes, because he'll have initial assessed valuations. Maybe someday wake up and get good news from the state of Missouri, who knows, but we could capture that
Yeah.
in the May workshop, so.
The May time period lets us see what the state of Missouri legislature does. So they might increase SAT by an amount that we didn't anticipate. And so we can then come back and make adjustments. Yeah. Mhm.
The presentation, whatever you're using here, would it be easier to, or can you just put an Excel document in there?
We can make it more graph based instead of more picture based like this one is.
Well, I mean, just for like the numbers when you're running it down the columns, the revenues by source, expenses by fund. it looks like you guys are just typing that in.
The working copy?
Is that
Is that a working copy? The old budget document that?
It's on.
no, the pretty one that I'm talking, the green one.
So
Pretty
for
one.
example, like some of these
Yeah,
numbers,
Is it easier for you to just put an Excel document in there? And the reason I ask is
Mhm.
there was a couple numbers that were keyed in wrong. So.
Okay.
Account 2182 was like a million something dollars, and I know
Was it
that
off by
we
one?
don't do a million something dollars in there. So.
yeah, I mean, we can use more of, this is based in Canva. And so I think they have more of a graph option that we can use instead of this, that would keep those more normalized.
Yeah, I mean, I just figure that when you're keying it in, you'll be able to do it right and sum it up and stuff. So.
I do know it looks nice like this for the public and everybody to do though. So
Right.
I don't know how happy medium somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, keep everything else. It's just, when you're doing the.
Yeah, we worked really hard on this document to try to, make it for what the board likes. So any feedback is always appreciated.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like, for the number part, when the numbers aren't adding up, so it just looks like it's just being.
Yeah, and there's a lot of numbers, so there is a chance that there is a typo where there meant to be a comma and there wasn't, as another digit. That is a possibility. We try to look as close as we can, but
Right.
that may happen.
I just figured that you've already produced it in Excel probably, and somebody looks like they're typing it in there. So I just didn't know if it'd be easier for you to just, put it into the document itself. Question on, did you say that we're running a deficit, but there was a word surplus in there on the document?
Sure. So if you look at all funds, not all funds, all unrestricted funds, because Fund 3 is restricted, 1, 2, and 4, there is a surplus.
You are using Fund 4 in there.
And
Not
so
Fund
if
1.
you look at the summary page, let me go to that real quick. If you go to the summary page, that is a surplus of $218,255. That includes Fund 4. If you take Fund 4 out of that and just do Funds 1 and 2, which is based on our operations, then it is a negative 98,000.
That was the other confusing part. You put brackets around the 218, so so that is truly a surplus.
It is, yeah, yeah.
Okay. In the documentation, it says that we gave an increase of 7.5%. How is administration paid? Are they paid 7.5% too?
Yeah, so that
Policy say that it's different than our staff.
So whatever is on cell J25 becomes the first cell of A1 on our administrative salary staff. And then that is basically has certain percentage for range and step, just like our certified staff. And so what is on J25 transfers directly over to the first cell of the administrative salary schedule.
So it's not 7.5%?
On average, it is around 7.5%.
Okay.
The teacher, if you look at 7.5%, that is truly cell E10. If you are more towards A1, it's a little bit less than that. If you're more towards J25, it's a little bit more than that. Same thing with administrator. If you're more towards A1, it's a little bit less. If you're more towards further range, further step, it's a little bit more. Just the way the salary schedules are calculated.
Okay, because it's definitely different that somebody makes $40,000 a year getting 7.5%. Somebody making $140,000 a year getting 7.5%. That's, I think we need to take a look at that going forward, because we are going to try to get our staff up, quite a bit. And so if we're giving 7.5% to the staff, we need to consider that going forward because we are so low on that.
And anytime there are recommendations, Kim will provide the support staff, the certified staff, the administrator salary schedule. So that way you can see all the cells and what they come out to.
Thank you.
But in general, as we talk about adding to the base, we look at E10 as the base, right? And
We do.
That percentage, and then things adjust.
Correct. Yeah, the salary and benefits committee was something they wanted to look at when we talked about the base. Instead of doing A1, they wanted to look at E10 as the cell that we focus on for that. That's correct.
We get additional questions, comments? This is an action item, as is a budget revision, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the second budget revision as presented.
So moved.
Second.
A motion, a second. If there's no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Next item on agenda 11.2, cohort and enrollment update for FY24.
Yes, so the last Wednesday in September is the count date for Smithville School District. And so that is the day that we put our cohort enrollment into our projection document and look where we've been as far as our enrollment goes, what we're at this year, and then what future years looks like. And so you can see this year that we were down 51 students from the previous school year. And so our total count for all grades, not including preschool, not including early childhood, was 2,516. These numbers here represent what each grade level had as far as student populations. You can see we had 172 kindergarten students. And this year we have 240 seniors. And so large graduating class. And so as our 240 seniors graduate and we bring in 172 kindergartners, you can see that that's about 70 students that we have a gap between our graduates and what our new kindergarten enrollment is. So we, just to stay even, we have to have 70 students move into Smithville School District to fill all those other grades, just to stay even with that. You can see as our population will start to decline, our juniors, our sophomores and freshmen, that gap isn't as big, so we won't have that such a big a problem. And you can see that that's why our, I'll call it our curve or population curve, starts to flatten out as we go. What will be helpful is we have an RFP out right now for a demographer that will take a look at Smithville School District, take a look at trends of what our population moves look like. The last time we had a demographer report was, I think, 2016-17. Obviously, that was pre-COVID. Some of those things have changed since then, and how people live, where they move, what those patterns are. And so I think that will also give us some insight to what future populations look like, not just this cohort enrollment. This is just one tool of many that we can use to look at that going forward. Down below, this shows the number of students that we currently have per building. So you can see we have at Maple, Horizon, and Eagle. Again, this does not include preschool. It's not included early childhood. So those number of students would bump up some of those buildings and what the principals actually have to manage and the teachers manage those buildings. And then it shows estimations in the future based off those current numbers. So this is just an info item only. It's just for your review, so you can kind of see the history and where we're going, and be happy to answer any questions you have.
I agree with the demographer. You know, one thing that's just a little bit discouraging to me too is losing high school and middle school, losing that much, because that is usually where our numbers are higher. We've started out lower, but by the time we've got there, they've been higher, and that's going to go, I mean, that's showing we're going down there too. So that's interesting just to think about.
How often do we do count days?
So we have, so Desi has one. They have a
state.
The official. Yeah.
We can do a count date every day.
I
So
mean,
the count date means they're enrolled, not necessarily if they're
it's
if
not.
they're present on that school day.
Oh, okay.
So just who's enrolled. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Never
So
mind.
you might have 100 kids sick, but yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what if it's an opt? Okay.
It's a good question.
Sorry, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions for Mr. Hedgecourse? All right, thank you very much. 11.3, high school gym bleachers.
So I have before you the quote that we received from Heartland Seating. Heartland Seating is the current vendor that we use for our bleachers that we have in the high school, as well as the middle school. And so with the bond project, of course, one of those projects was to renovate our gym. And to do that, we had to knock out the mezzanines to create that space. And so when we did that, one of the unique issues that we have with the gym is the height of the ceiling. The height of that ceiling, that was built in 1969. And so when looking at renovating that and installing our bleachers, many of you may have been to like Excelsior Springs or Oak Park or Winnetonka, where you have the lower level and then you have the mezzanine, but you have a walkway in front of that. Well, we looked at doing that, and if we did that, we would not be able to add the number of bleachers we wanted to because of the sight lines. The sight lines would not allow a walkway in front. So the recommendation of Heartland was to create yes, two different separate bleachers, but once the lower level comes out, the upper level comes out, it looks like one big bleacher set. So it adds the maximum amount of population that we can for the space, and also creating that bleachers that adds about 500 total. Right now we have about 1,000 capacity in our gym. This would add 500, so we now have 1,500 with the design that they have. So for all sections, so the lowers would come out, the uppers would be installed, all total, all in, that is 388,516. They have a blackout option here. That's just something they add to all their quotes. Some schools like having, kind of that black look on like the stairs and the railings and everything. For this project, we decline that due to the cost. They're not something we asked for. They just put it on there. And then we, of course, need to pull out all of our old bleachers and dispose of those, which is a heavy task as big as those are. And so that was a $14,000 cost to dispose of those bleachers. So all in my memo, it is around $402,000 for the bleachers. And so I would ask that the board approve this. And the reason I'm bringing it to you before I have all the bids for the gym construction project is the amount of time it takes for them to do custom bleachers. So they have to come in and laser measure everything to ensure that you have that singular bleacher look when they complete, because you have some on the lower level and some on the mezzanine. This allows that 7-8 month timeline. So when summer comes around, we can get these installed, because when they're doing this project, there can be no activities going on in the gym. So it's a timeline thing of why I'm coming to this earlier than I would the bids for the other construction pieces on that project. So be happy to answer any questions you have.
In the bond project, is this within the estimated budget for bleachers?
It is.
Any market for used bleachers?
The problem with to sell these, the problem is about half our motors are out on these as they are. So we are band-aiding, getting by as much as we could. Matter of fact, it was a problem 2 years ago, and they wanted to replace them. I told them, sorry, we're going to have to just keep band-aiding it, because with this bond project coming up, we can't put invest a bunch of money in it if we know they're just going to come out. So
What was your question?
there might be some scrap metal that they
was a
use,
market
but
for the used bleachers.
Oh, yeah. That was a good question.
If anyone's interested, please contact Mr. Hedgeforth. We'd be happy to trade. But,
we got rid of the rough.
I was gonna say, you took.
Yeah, exactly.
I shouldn't have left yet.
Surplus property, come up. Side profile. I would entertain a motion to approve 11.3 as presented.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Hearing no further discussion, please vote. Excellent. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.4, long-range HVAC plan.
Yeah, so we had a lot of talks in previous board meetings about deferred maintenance. And so in the past, when I've talked about our roofing plan, that seemed to gain a lot of traction, and the board seemed to like to see, the condition of all the roofs that we have, kind of what the plan is to replace. And so with the last bonding project, we'd gotten so far behind on HVAC that we had to have that as one of our main items or activities that we were doing in the bond. So with working with BCS, who was the contractor that won the bid on the middle school in Horizon, we created a long-term improvement plan for HVAC that kind of mimics our roofing plan, that shows all the HVAC units that we have on each of the schools and what condition they're in. Meaning, for example, if we have commercial units that are over 20 years old, we have those in red. Any type of residential type units, like we have some residential PMZs on the high school here, anything that was over 15 years old, we put in red. And then for VRF, which causes all sorts of fun at Eagle Heights, anything there over 12 years old, we put in red. And so this kind of goes through each building. This is the high school, and you'll notice these two are in green. These were the units that the board approved early this fall for replacement over spring break. So we thank you for that. Those were much needed units to be replaced. And so we have those in green because those were executed. And then you can see the other buildings and the needs of those buildings. So with Eagle Heights being new, even though we've had some frustrating issues with VRF, the high school and Maple are the two buildings where our focus needs to now be considering that we have all the replacements done at the middle school and then all the replacements done at Horizon. So you can see, of course, all these are all in green because we just did that project. And so this is just an info only. This is just to give you a view of the condition of how we're sitting on all our HVAC units. And then so as we have discussions with deferred maintenance in the future and what we do for capital projects, you guys have this in front of you. So if I mention that, hey, we really need to replace this unit at Maple because it's one of the oldest, it has the highest amount of work orders, and it affects the most kids, you guys kind of have that background with that. So be happy to answer any questions on this.
This looks great.
Yeah, thank you.
I was at a conference and we were discussing large scale federal infrastructure initiatives related to cost recovery concepts on air handling equipment.
Mhm.
I'm gonna plug you in with two of them because essentially there's a consultant who will come out and they'll look at ROI values based on type of assets you can put back,
Mhm.
and it will help fund itself. And there's a program for it, so we're not trying to figure out how to fund it ourselves, but
Mhm.
it's pretty neat.
Is that company
You'll
called
appreciate
Navitas
it.
or?
I can't
Okay.
remember. I took a picture and I thought of you when I was
Yeah.
sitting in that conference, but
Yeah, there's definitely companies that do that, and Navitas is one of them.
I
Might
know
be some others.
Train comes out and does a lot of this, but
Yeah,
I just know there's two federal programs that are worth paying attention to.
yeah, absolutely.
Is the long-term plan to keep the same kind of system at Eagle?
No.
So,
No.
I mean, we constantly have issues there. So
We do.
is it possible to start transitioning away from the system that was put in?
The hard part is that we have a 10-year warranty on those. And so as one failed, like which
Have they honored their 10?
they have, yeah, they honored it. And so we did a full unit replacement this weekend. The thing is that it replaces the hardware, not the labor. And so I anticipate us after 10 years, like the one that failed on that east hallway at Eagle, instead of replacing it with another VRF unit, we'd replace it with a mini split or RTU or something totally different than what's there now. And so as we look long-term, so when we built the activity center, there was no VRF. Anything we've done since we built Eagle, we've done 0 VRF. So we are waiting for that life cycle to finish, and then we will move away from VRF.
It's very frustrating.
It is very frustrating.
Everybody out there.
I agree 100%. To have a building that was built in 2018 and already have the issues we have with it is very frustrating.
The units that are classified as residential, what is the cost for replacing those?
Sure. I don't have, yeah.
Ballparking.
Let me look at that area real quick. When we replace the high school, we would probably do mini splits like we have over here. I would say for those 3 units, 1, 2, and 3 are probably going to be about $500,000
For those 3 units.
for those 3 units. Yep.
So,
And that's just an estimate without talking to BCS or any other vendors, just off the top of my head, based on what other bids have been for other units.
so they're not much cheaper than the other units.
They're not, yeah. I guess if we replace it with more residential units, it'd be cheaper than that, but my recommendation would be to get rid of the PMZs and go with an RTU or mini split.
Right.
It's commercial based, not residential based.
Mhm.
I'm sure they put them in the past just because money. They put something in a little cheaper based on the financial needs at that time, which was, 15, 20 years ago.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Looks good, Robert. Thank you, bro.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there's no additional question, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, 11.5, academic achievement data.
Thank you. Before I get into that, I need to add one more person to recognize for helping with new teachers. And that was Christy Mellon. And because I may not mention it again, Taylor John and Justin Orschelin are also scheduled for some upcoming meetings. So I want to make sure that I recognize all of them. Academic achievement data in the description, there's the kindergarten observation form that I'm going to share via a Friday update. But I would like to just talk a little bit about the other 2. The first one, which is the last attachment, are our market value assets. So this is related to real world learning and our work with Kaufman. We had 83% of our graduates from last year achieved at least one market value asset. In the box, there is a typo. Instead of one or more, it should say more than one. We had half of our kids earn more than one market value asset, which was one. And Penny Frick, who Denise and I share as an assistant, she developed these descriptions that we feel are more user-friendly to those who may not be as familiar with the Kaufman work. And so this is kind of a vision for what that dashboard will look like as we continue to create graphics to share our story and how we're progressing on some of our action items for our strategic plan. So we kind of envision that there would be an icon that is this image, and you click on the image and it would enlarge to the document. But very proud of our efforts related to market value assets. Scott Moore has been a great addition, being in Fort Osage and 2 years ahead of us. In that work, he came with some really great ideas on how to get us to that 100%. And by 2030 is what Kaufman is calling for, but we wrote it into our strategic plan by 2028. So we have 17% left to go. Those are the hardest ones to figure out, you know, those kids who aren't falling naturally into these categories. How are we going to provide those opportunities for them? So excited about that data. Any questions about that?
Like an industry recognized credentials, talking about the Green Gala, what Mr. B brought shared. Does that?
It does. And by the way, we had a grant available to us that we purchased. I think I purchased 80 certificates for his kids, vouchers for his kids to do that. But yeah, that's exactly what he was talking about, those kind of credentials.
So are there others that might be needed that we aren't?
Right now, we are funding all of them for our kids. So with that, ag is our largest for us locally. Now NCC covers the others, but I believe that I don't think our students pay for that, and I can check on that if you need me to. We are going to expand and add. We would like to add the paraprofessional certificate for our cadet teachers. We would like to add some marketing and business IRCs, and the teachers have communicated those needs with me, and we have funds to cover them. So as much as possible, we would like to cover the costs of the assessments for our kids. But yeah, we're looking to expand this as well.
When did this, I'm trying to remember 5-6 years ago when this was just an idea, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
I know.
This is one of my favorite stories because you have a clear illustration of what an intentional design program and the benefit and value not only as our kids, but our community. And gosh, dang, look at where we are. I mean, you ever reflect on that?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that, because honestly, there was a point where we were like, we can't do this because we can't fund it on our own.
We're like, oh, no.
I know. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So, and just like you said, Ian, it connects our kids with our community, and we already have such a strong connection in Smithville anyway, but to expand upon that has been really exciting.
Of these four categories, which one's probably is the highest?
Dual credit,
dual credit.
the early college. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, can we put this out better for our community? Because I think there's some confusion on what real world learning really means. Because some think, oh, they're not learning that, or anymore. So I think that
5 years,
clear,
fresh 3 to last 2 years where it's really taken off.
yeah.
But it's brand new for everybody.
So I think just
But how would
educating-
you
yeah.
recommend doing that? Because we've done a video. We've
I know.
Yeah.
But it comes up every time, in some of those meetings. It's like,
So just repeating whenever we can.
I think I think it is rebooting, and Carol.
clear. So I
Yes.
think this alone makes it clear.
That great one pager, right? Something that's very consumable is the way I describe it. Also, Carol shared at the Chamber of Commerce this July and did a presentation there. And I think there are other opportunities where we continue to push this information
Like
out.
incoming freshmen when they have their meeting. I'm assuming this is talked about. They're explaining what that means, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. So
Yes,
basically,
I can-
whatever we can.
Yeah, I can tell you my daughter will have one of these. Well, my freshman will have one of these because she's in one of our courses. my oldest daughter will have 2 of these because she's in Northland Caps. So I think there's opportunities where we get kids into these programs to naturally fit them in. And then as they're in that program, start explaining. Because if you tell, hey, here's what a client connected project is, they're gonna like blank.
Right.
That's too much. But when you say, hey, you're going to be part of Northland Caps, and then she met the North Kansas City Hospital CEO and they gave them a project, all of a sudden that has a whole different meaning to her. And then I tell her at the end, you just got a client connected project. That's what that experience.
And I think Mark is using our students to say a lot of that, because my son is doing the client collective the project management class. Been awesome for him. He doesn't talk about school too often, talks to me all the time about what he's doing in there. You know, they're learning how to make t-shirt, learning how to go and work with. So I think if we could use some of our students to help promote the program to the younger people coming in too, that would be a good thing.
That's a great idea. Anything else related to market value assets? The next piece of data that I wanted to share, Randy, this is the second attachment. Now, I had a lot more in this presentation, and you will be happy to know that Dr. Moss said too much, just kind of like what he said there about market value assets and client connected projects. But I did want to share some data related to the reading fluency assessment that we are now required to give our students. So this is a K-3 assessment. It's required by Senate Bill 681. For this current school year, if we agreed to share our data with the state, which I'm fine, I mean, they're paying for it. So I'm like, yes, okay. So we will get the expense for this assessment reimbursed. It is $7 a student. So that's about $5,000 for so that's a significant amount out of our testing budget. This is an adaptive test that assesses foundational skills, oral reading, and it also includes a dyslexia screener. So again, we're giving it in grades K through 3. I'm going to highlight just one portion of it today. But before I do that, I wanted to go into the next slide, please, Randy. Which benchmarks we're actually assessing. And so this document, there's a copy of it at your station so that you can read it a little bit better. You'll notice the first benchmark, which is the adaptive oral reading, has a blue star next to it. At the bottom, you'll see that we're giving that in grades 1 through 3. Caveat to that is grade 1 won't take that one until spring. So this is an assessment that we give 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. Grade 1 will transition to that assessment in the springtime. So until then, they are giving the same one that kindergarten is giving, which is the foundational skills. And you can see that that assesses language comprehension, decoding, and sentence reading fluency. The reason that we opted for the adaptive oral reading rather than the adaptive oral reading passages only is because of those little purple circles that you see. We wanted the assessment to either go down to some of the foundational skills if a kid needed it, and then attach the oral reading literal comprehension piece if the kids were ready for that as well. So that gives us a little more flexibility in what kind of data we get back. And I'll be honest with you, we get a lot of data. The spreadsheet for this is gigantic. And so this is the introduction to the story. We'll continue to get better data as we continue to get this throughout the year. And by the end of the year, I think we'll really have a very firm understanding of what kind of information this is telling us about our kids. So right now we're taking this information and kind of comparing it with other data that we have available to us. So this is not by any means a be all end all for any of our decisions that we're making with kids. So I just wanted to be clear about that. We do incorporate other pieces of data as we look at these results to see, are we seeing the same things in other measurements, whether that be classroom observations, our Rigby assessments, or pathways data.
How does it align? What do you see?
That it was fairly accurate. One thing that we did notice, especially with our kiddos that like are on our radar for perhaps needing interventions, one thing that we noticed is the kids have to wear a headset in order to do this because they are reading aloud and they're being recorded. The nice thing about that is a teacher can then go back and listen to that recording. And so, you know, if something comes up, they're like, we're not quite sure about that particular score doesn't match what we know about the kid, we can go and listen to what they did. We noticed that it's a new thing and they're kind of touching the little microphone, and that's going to distort it. So we need some more practice with this. And as our kids become more accustomed to it, I think our data is going to become more accurate. But I chose one piece to share with you tonight because we actually have data on this for all of the grade levels that we assessed. So if you flip to the back, this is a document that's kind of going to help us understand what the numbers mean when we look at it. So the first section is pre-K, and we are not giving this to our pre-K kids. So you'll notice that there's a diamond next to fall under kindergarten, and there's a diamond next to fall under first grade. Those are the things that we want to look at. When we look at this data, we're going to see a number under level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. For our kindergarten kids, if they scored at a level 0, then they are approaching expectations. They're close, not quite there. If they scored at a level 1 or a level 2, then they are meeting or exceeding expectations. For first grade, we would expect them to at least be at level 2, and that would be close, but not quite there. And level 3, 4, and 5 would be meeting or exceeding expectations. So if we see kiddos, if we see numbers in level 0 or level 1 for first grade, then those are kids that on this particular assessment are below where they should be. Second and third grade are not on here, but I will tell you that where we want them to be is level 4 or 5. If they're there, then they are exactly where they should be. However, we're also going to see that there are a lot of kids in those grade levels who aren't showing up in that graph because they are exceeding those foundational skills and they didn't even have to assess on that, if that makes sense. And that goes back to these purple circles here. So those kids only were assessed on the green circles with the check marks because that's where their level was. They're beyond the foundational. So if you look at the next slide, this is phonological awareness, and there's a phrase, zone of proximal development. If you're not familiar with Vygotsky and educational research, that may be an unfamiliar term for you. That basically means what the kids are ready to master next. So it's identifying, and literally in the spreadsheet that is gigantic, it will tell us this kid is ready for decoding this. So we get some good information from this, but that's what zone of proximal development refers to. Okay, so again, have this thing handy. So you'll see in kindergarten, in this first administration, we had 36 kids who scored level 0. That is approaching expectations. That's not quite there. But we had 19 at level 1, which is meeting expectations. We had 53, 21, 26, respectively at levels 2, 3, and 4. And that is all exceeding expectation. We can take no credit for that, however, because this was done right at the very beginning of the year. So that's how the kids came to us. And that's exciting. And this is the entire district. I haven't broken it down by building in this data set.
Well, we can take some parents as teachers. We can take some credit.
Well, yes. Okay, we can, but there's not a whole lot of instruction that went into that. So thank you, parents, for bringing them to us prepared. The next row is grade 1. And so you'll see that we had 12 students total who were in level 0 or level 1. So those are kids that, according to this assessment, are below level, and we need to take a look at them. We had 20 at level 2, which is approaching expectation. And then there were 128 kiddos who were either at meets or exceeds expectations in grade 1. Grade 2 and grade 3, remember levels 4 and 5 are where we want them to be. If they're there, then they're exactly where they should be. Please note that in grade 2, there were 80 kids whose skill levels were beyond this assessment, so their number doesn't show up in this chart at all. And there were 123 kids in grade 3 in that same category, so they're not even reflected in this. So we're looking at levels 4 and 5. For grade 2, we had 77 of the kids there. Only 17 did not meet the level 4 or 5 benchmark. And in grade 3, only 3 students. So again, this is a snapshot. We'll see what the data looks like in the winter and then in the spring. But that's the beginning of our story.
I coached third grade football and the fact that we have that many kids, it's incredible.
I knew you were gonna say.
Because to get them to sit still and listen or walk through practice, it drives me nuts.
We hear you.
Why we're not teachers.
Very impressive.
There you
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, similar story with phonics and word recognition. I won't go through all of it for you, but the same levels apply. So we have 11 kiddos in grade 1 that are below, 7 that are approaching, the remainder are all right where they should be. In grade 2, we have 16 kiddos that are not at level 4 or 5. And in grade 3, there were only 4 on this particular assessment. So this one is more about identifying the letter combinations and how they go together, where the phonological awareness is more about how the sounds work to develop our language. So those are the 2 things that were assessed on this.
Do you think that's attributed to the Take Flight and all of the initiatives that we have?
Maybe for some kids, like potentially.
Okay.
We'd have to look. I mean, we assessed those kiddos. So especially those who had been in it, all of last year, I think that probably did have an impact. We have a lot of interventions that we have available to kids. I can't tell you the exact number, but I think we have close to 60 students at Eagle Heights that are receiving reading support. We have probably around 50 at Maple. And I think somewhere 40 to 45 at Horizon that are receiving reading support.
So how do
And
we,
most
how do we
of those,
capture all that within the day? How do we segment those kids? And
they
what's
get
all-
pulled at certain times. So, we don't ever take them out of recess and we don't ever take them out of their encore. So we'll create a schedule where we can pull kids with similar needs at a certain time so that we can provide an intervention for them at simultaneously.
I absolutely think it's incredible and love it.
Yeah, it's
a lot of work, but you guys are, I'm telling you.
well, we have amazing reading specialists, so the credit goes to them.
Absolutely.
But
What's been the feedback, another test, what's the feedback from teachers and how can we help support?
well, and that's not the only other test. So the other test that we're required to give in kindergarten now is the kindergarten observation form. That data I'll share with you via one of your Friday updates. We did a lot of testing, especially in kindergarten at the beginning of the year. We actually are behind in getting like our pathways groups and stuff going because of all the assessing. One thing that we need to do, for example, the reason that we didn't look at the kindergarten observation form data at this time is because there's a huge discrepancy. And what we learned is that some buildings gave the letter sounds assessment the 2nd week of school, another building gave it the 5th week of school. So there was some time to get some instruction in and make a difference in that. So we need to be consistent about when we're giving that particular part of the assessment so that we can really look at the data and compare building to building. But yeah, and again, that's another Senate Bill 681 requirement that we just can't get around, that we're required to give that assessment now. So it is a lot of testing at the beginning of the year.
Any non-required testing that we are foregoing since there's another required?
No, because the information that we get, like the other one that we give at the beginning of the year is the NWA growth. And that's important to us. That's how we develop our small groups and our when we go into RTI. So that data is critical to us as a system. So at this point, no, but our teachers, they went at it with a really good attitude. They understand what we would like to do. So for example, we give additional dyslexia screeners. If what we're seeing from this screener is really consistent with what we're seeing on our own, then that's one that we might stop giving. We had hoped that we would get information from this fluency assessment that maybe would allow us to forego giving our Rigby assessments, but we don't get that kind of data. It doesn't give us a real true, is the student reading at grade level? So yeah, it's a bummer, but the one thing that we might be able to give up would be our local dyslexia screener. And we are looking at that.
If possible, I'd like to see this information by building.
Yeah, I can do that. Absolutely. I'll put it in a Friday update.
Fantastic. Any additional questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda, 11.6, supplemental pay for October 2023. Mrs. Carlisle will abstain from this as she has a loved one on here. And I will make a motion to approve it as presented. Second. You two can arm wrestle and the winner gets a gorilla.
Ian's got it.
All right, Ian's
Feel
got it
sorry
then.
for him.
There's no further discussion. Please vote before it comes to blows. Fantastic. Motion carries 6-0 with Mrs. Carlisle abstaining. Next item on the agenda, 11.7, approval of regular session minutes for September 2023.
So moved.
Second. Wait a minute, hold on.
I guess I'm taking that second.
Scott and Stacia there, yeah.
Right. If there's no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 6-0 with Mr. Saxton abstaining as he was not present. Next on the agenda, 11.8, approval of bus transportation routes. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. We have a
I'm
motion
sorry.
and a second. If there's no this side of the table.
I'm just gonna say, board policy, I have presented the bus transportation.
Ian comes back to a board meeting and we're at 9:35. Susan, you called it.
Your fault, Ian.
That's not a problem.
It's not popping
There.
up.
Please vote.
Can't. Oh, hold on.
Or did it get approved in the consent agenda?
No, I cleared that. Let's try this. Under discussion. There we go. There we go.
There we go. Let's go old school.
Yeah, it's true.
6-0, Mrs. Carlisle abstained. Your favorite new one, 12.1. To adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
No miscellaneous.
Sure, there's once a lot of discussion, right? Just a reminder, MSBA coming up at the start of November. Look forward to seeing everyone there. With that, please vote.
Yep, so-
7-0, we are adjourned.
I'll be around.